And when you made your notes, was there a particular way you structured? So did you do it thematically? You know,
yeah, for sure.
All right. So I mean, how did you do it thematically?
Okay, for example, if I'm going to keep returning to the example of belonging, and I studied Romulus, my father. It's probably not a secret now because I've already mentioned it. But our teacher encouraged us to think about different types of belonging. So like in Romulus, my father, there's like a cultural element to belonging, and then there's like there's a family element there. So I sort of put that in the context of like family and generational type of belonging. And then I sort of thought about it in terms of like, there's this undercurrent of philosophy that sort of runs through the book of like this universalist philosophy about like how, you know, we belong to this common humanity type thing. So that's another layer that I sort of, and then I sort of put those all together and thought about how they worked within the novel and how they sort of applied to belonging. So again, it was this process of like looking back and thinking, okay, so there's this dimension of cultural belonging in the text, and again, it's like this thematic approach, and you think of, okay, so belonging is a perception. So when they arrive in Australia, their perceptions are like shaped by their European background, and then the context of the locals is an Australian one. So they're sort of these strange Europeans in turn for the Australian community. So that's how, like, you know, belonging is a perception. Then over time, you sort of see that they're more integrated into the Australian community and that sort of thing. So in that sense, it shows like belonging is a perception. Over time, if we think of belonging as a perception and not just like this fixed concept, that's how it sort of works. But yeah, definitely in terms of
themes. So you'd just again sort of putting this into steps. You'd read the text. You'd then deconstruct the syllabus. Part of deconstructing the syllabus would really then, I think, be understanding, I guess, some of the underlying themes for a concept. In this case,
yeah,
belonging.
Mm-hmm.
Rereading the text with these themes in mind and creating notes that were then structured on the theme with sort of discussions of how that text explores the theme. What did you then do with these notes that were structured by, you know, the theme?
Okay, so I think like the final sort of step when you're thinking about that is relating back to the syllabus. You're sort of meant to have this process of reflection at the end of the course, in which you're meant to sort of think of how has it challenged my preconceived assumptions about belonging, and, you know, what generalizations did I used to think of belonging in, and how complex is my view now, and, you know, has it really opened up my worldview in terms of how I understand belonging? And that's what they want you to do. Well, this is belonging in particular, I suppose, but in a lot of the English courses, is you're meant to sort of approach it from your own point of view. And that's because I know a lot of English markers have the problem with pre-prepared responses, and the way they try to weed out the pre-prepared responses is by getting you to put your own personal response into it, which I don't know how effective it necessarily is as a safeguard against pre-prepared responses, because I think you can pre-prepare a response that puts yourself in there anyway. But yeah, I mean, I'm trying to think about this, but it definitely involves some degree of reflection at the end of it. So you're meant to sort of think of, okay, if belonging is a perception, and coming from my own personal background, so like, did I always assume that, you know, cultural belonging was set in stone? Did I always think that where you come from defines where you're going, or did I believe that it was possible to change one's view? And then, in terms of like, you know, multiculturalism in Australia, like Romulus, my father, that's the background I'm coming from, is like an Australian context. I've always been brought up on this notion of multiculturalism, and does that challenge my view? Like, did it sort of challenge my view that multiculturalism is possible in Australia, or did it? I'm going off on a tangent here, but I suppose what I'm trying to get at,
I guess you're really building that concept of personal reflection.
Yeah, is that you're meant to sort of, you're meant to put yourself in the text in a way.
Okay. So you'd create your notes and think about how you put yourself in the text.
Yeah.
And then I gather you use all of that to construct an essay.
Yeah.